All right. First of all, that was such a rich discussion, and I just I'm really appreciating just the opportunity to hear from all of you powerful, passionate, knowledgeable people about this hugely important issue. So thank you. Um, yeah, it's a little hard to switch, but yeah, let's switch. So yeah, Diane asked me to talk today about how to think like a process worker. So I'm just gonna go through a bunch of stuff. Sorry, it's not gonna. There's a lot I had in mind, so I'm just gonna try to go through it. So one of the main ideas in process work is deep democracy, and regular democracy, you know you you vote, and if you get 51%, then you win. If you get 49%, you lose. Unless you're in Florida, um, and
Maybe
but
Ohio.
a deeper democracy is well, that also depends on who you let vote. That's the main issue, really. But a deeper democracy is that all voices and all points of view and all kinds of experiences are heard and included, and out of the interaction between those different voices and points of views and experiences, out of the interaction, that the wisdom of the group or community can emerge. Anyway, all these things I'm talking about process work. Process work was developed by my mentor and teacher Arnie Mindell, and anyway, so that's the idea of deeper democracy, that all the voices, points of views, experience are needed and need to interact in order for the wisdom of the community to emerge. And another key idea in process work is that the problem is the seed of the solution. So what does that mean? The problem is the seed of the solution. For instance, I was working with this white father and his mixed race daughter. Right. I'm a therapist and a facilitator, and so I was working with them, with them on their relationship, and the mixed race daughter was like complaining about some racist shit that the father had said, and the father said, "You think I'm terrible, but you're not being fair to me. You know, your mom is black, and she and I have a great relationship, and she doesn't think I'm racist." Right. So there's a lot of different problems with what he said. Right. There's white fragility. There's defensiveness. There's that credentializing. I'm a good person because I'm married to a black woman, and there's a lot of different problems with what he said. But the one that I addressed was how he focused on his intent rather than his impact. Right. He was like, yeah, that's not what I meant. White people think, if you only knew what I meant, then you wouldn't be hurt by what I said. Um, so what I did was I said to the guy, I see your good intent. You feel like you're a good father. You are a good father. I'm sure you are, and you want to support your daughter. And the father said, thank you. Finally, somebody sees me. And I said, so I know you're going to want to know your impact on your daughter. And he said, well, of course I will. This is after like an hour of like her trying to talk about, what it was like, and him like, no, I don't want to hear about that. That's not fair. And but I said, you're a good father. I see your good intent, so I know you're going to want to know your impact. And he said, of course. He said, tell me about the impact. And so she was able to talk to him, and he was able to actually listen. So in that situation, I mean, a lot can be unpacked from that, but there was conflict and there was disconnection, but leaning into the problem behind that led to a deeper connection and finally understanding. His intention was part of the problem, and that problem was the seed of the solution. So I'm just going to jump into the next thing here. There's a lot to unpack in any of these things, but another idea in process work is about the difference between the final cause and the efficient cause, right? Aristotle talked about there's four kinds of causes, right? Aristotle said, you know, there's the efficient cause of building a house is you hammer the nails into the wood, right? That's the cause. That's the efficient cause. The formal cause is the architect makes the plans. The material cause is the wood and the nails that go into it. That's the material that causes that house to be there. But then there's the final cause. The final cause is what purpose does that house have? That's it's the purpose is that somebody lives there, right? So the efficient cause of that conflict I just talked about was white fragility and all different kinds of patterns of whiteness that led to microaggressions and defensiveness and right. But what was the final cause? The final cause is like, where's that leading to, right? Like efficient cause is like this bangs into that and that goes in that direction. But the final cause is this is going in that direction. Where's that leading us to? Right? So where that led us was to deeper connection through a real discussion of the impact on the daughter. Right? So we're interested in, yes, what is the problem? What is the thing that caused that? Right? And all the stuff that we so often talk about here, we were just talking about. And then also, is there a direction that that's leading us that can be useful, for instance, in a conflict situation to notice? So another idea that we talk about in process work is around field theory, right? So like I know I loved when I was like in fourth grade or something, and my teacher gave us all magnets and iron filings, and we took a piece of paper and we put the iron filings on the paper, and then we put the magnet underneath. And the iron filings were like a mess, and then they went like that to the magnetic poles, right? Back then I thought I was going to be a scientist, but unfortunately science wasn't as easy as that. But so that is the field, right? There's a magnetic field, and the magnetic field arranges those iron filings into into a polarization, right? And that happens also in groups, right? That the polarizations in the field arranges people. The people are like the iron filings in the field that get polarized in one direction or another. So like imagine a group, and like imagine you're like with a group, and then the topic of race comes up, right? That's going to polarize in a certain way, right? The topic of gender comes up, that's going to polarize in a different way, right? The topic of sexual orientation comes up, that's going to polarize even in a different way. So working with those polarizations that happen in the field and noticing that it's not that what's happening here is this kind of ineffable kind of, you can't really notice the field, but you can notice the polarizations. And so it's important to notice also the field that's behind that. So one of the things that happens with that are about roles. So whenever there's a conflict, it gets polarized into certain roles. We could say that the field is expressing itself as a polarization into these different roles, right? And so there can be the role, right. There's so many different roles in life, right? There's the role of the teacher or the role of the student, right? Just a little bit ago, I was in the role of the student. Now I'm in the role of the teacher, right? I'm talking now before I was listening, right? So thanks, Sundiata. You can watch it later if you want. Um, and and so a role is bigger than any individual, right? The role of the teacher, right, is filled by a lot of different people in this room, right? It's bigger than any one individual, and an individual is bigger than any one role, right? A lot of us are teachers here, but we're not only teachers, right? We are a lot of other things. So so and people can be polarized in different roles, and then the roles switch. So let me give a quick example of that. So like let's imagine a team, right? And it's a mixed race team, right? Just for clarity, for simplicity's sake, let's say that there's white folks and black folks there, right? And the white folks in team meetings feel comfortable and free to speak up, right? And the black folks in this hypothetical team meeting don't feel so welcome and afraid if they show who they really are, they might get in trouble. So they tend to kind of hold back in work meetings, right? Now, let's imagine that same team is suddenly discussing race, and the white people are kind of stiff and quiet. They're worried they're going to say the wrong thing and be attacked for being a racist, right? The black folks have a lot to say, and they're upset with the white people for staying quiet and not showing themselves, right? So in that situation, there's two different roles. There's the role of the one who speaks up and is free, and the role of the one who holds back and is more afraid, right? So we could say, let's talk about this role, right? The role of the one who's afraid to be, right, first of all, the one who speaks up and the one who holds back, but that role switches depending on the situation, right? In the team meeting, it's like this. When we're talking about race, it's like this, right? So you notice the same roles, but we can switch roles, and that happens all the time in conflict situations. So if we pay attention to this role, right, the role that's afraid to get in trouble or be attacked, so it's quiet, right? There's also a what we call a ghost role that role is afraid of, right? A ghost role is a fancy name for a role that people are feeling or talking about, but nobody's identified with it. And the role that everybody's afraid of here is the attacker, right? I'm gonna get you in trouble. I'm gonna attack you as a racist, right? That role of the attacker is a ghost role in that system. And so, working in a conflict situation, it can be really helpful to notice, first of all, the different roles, because it helps you work not just with the individuals, but also with the roles that are present there. That can be really helpful. And it's really helpful also to work with the ghost roles there, because then you can name that ghost role. You could say, "Whoa, it sounds like everybody's afraid of being attacked. What kind of attacking might be going on there? Yes, are there attacks that happen here? We need to talk about that." So that's one aspect of that. And then the other thing is that everybody's afraid of the attacker. Everybody's suffering from the attacker, right? Which means everybody wants safety. everybody wants a sense of security and well-being there, right? So that then you can start resolving that conflict and bridging that polarization because we all actually want the same thing. And how to but it's going to be very different how we get it. So and these roles, right, can often happen just within one person, right? Yeah, I've got the scared one inside of me, and yeah, I've got the free one inside of me, and yeah, I sometimes attack. That's true. And so by we can work on the conflict by also working inside of ourselves, by working on ourselves. So I'm talking really fast here. Any let, let's take it just a little break here. I got more to say, but anybody have any questions about that so far, or things to say about that?
So Lane, I have, sorry, Nancy, go ahead.
No, Jordana, go ahead.
I just had a question about a ghost role. What I remember from when we went to Deep Democracy in Greece in 2017, which is when I first met you and heard you, there was this sense of like, I was trying to find out if a ghost role there. Remember, we were trying to get the big group, the fishbowl, to deal with white people and have white people talk about whiteness. And we weren't managing to get that done. And I was wondering who or what the ghost role was, or if that's even a relevant way to look at it.
What yeah, I don't know about that situation. I have to put back in there,
Okay.
but yeah, in that situation, nobody, I guess, wanted to identify as the whiteness,
Right. Except
right?
for Diane. She was very good.
So Lane,
Yeah.
in the discussion we just had on reparations,
Hmm.
what would a ghost role be? Would it be white not wanting to be identified as the white people who are supposed to start forking over money to help pay for the sins of our forefathers? Is that what it would
Well,
be? Would that be one? Are there many
let's
roles?
let's say in this group, for instance, right? So in this group, my guess is that nobody identifies as the one who doesn't want to pay reparations, right? We're all on board with reparations, right? We're all want to work toward that and make that happen. So in our group, the ghost role is the one who doesn't want to pay, the one who says no to that. So now, so so I mean, this is out of the a little amount of time that we have right now to talk about this, but how does that role live inside of us, and how might that be important to talk about? So for instance, where don't I mean, first of all, if we can channel that role and find out why that role doesn't want to pay, why I don't want to pay, then we'll be able to better deal with those people, right? Because we'll be able to find out about them inside of ourselves, you know? And it may not be specifically about reparations that I'll be able to find that, but I'm sure there's somewhere in my life where I don't really want to give up something when I've hurt somebody, when I've taken something away from somebody. There's probably somewhere in my life where I can relate to that and where I have that inside of me. And can I speak to that? And can I speak from that? And then can we have an interaction about that? Again, that deep democracy, that interaction between all the different roles. And then we can learn how to deal with that, right? And there might also be something in that role right? There might be something in that role that's important that says, or the role who says, I'm going to take that horse, right? Is there something in that role that says, I'm going to take that horse that we need as we're
Yeah.
battling for reparations, right? Give me that.
Well,
That's mine. I
even
deserve that.
even in this group, I mean, I don't want to overly complicate things, but even in this group, I can feel within myself that there's a part of me that's afraid of the reparations. I mean, I think of all my brothers and how
So
angry.
Nancy, I really, we don't have time now to.
Okay, oh,
Sorry. Yeah, but
that's just me. Okay.
but that's right. But finding that in ourselves, and finding also, is there a power in that
Mhm.
that actually we don't want to be like that asshole who took the horse. Sorry, I curse so much, everybody. We don't want to be like that guy who took the horse. But is there an essence of that energy that can be useful in our struggle for reparations? Is there something that we could use also? Not that we have to be that racist person, but is there some, right? This is also the inner aspect of process work. So I want to go on and talk about a couple other things here. So um, so we talk about different dimensions of experience in process work, right? We talk about, there's a what we call the consensus reality, right? We all, the part of reality that's like measurable and people basically agree on, right? Um, so uh, right? So, for instance, in that team that I was talking about, right? We can measure how many people are in the room, how many are black, how many are white, what's the hierarchy of the organization, the reality of racial inequity, who gets paid what in that group. And then there's all the subjective experiences and the feelings. That's another level, all the subjective experiences and the feelings and the roles that are there that are unseen, but they're experienced, right? That's also an aspect of that subjective thing, right? The sense of freedom or restriction that we each have when we're polarized in one way or another, right? So that's the second aspect, the subjective experiences and feelings and stuff like that. And then the third aspect is kind of the sense of the whole and the eldership, the caring for everybody, the common ground, which in that example would be, we all want to feel safe. That's the common ground. So it's helpful to notice those different levels of experience, so that we don't get confused about which one we're working on in a given moment. Okay, I just want to. Sorry, I know I'm blurting so much out here. I hope. Okay, let me talk about one other thing here. So, and it's about outer diversity and inner diversity. So, in the outer world, there's the mainstream, right? Let's say white folks in this situation. In our country, there's the mainstream, and then there's the ones who are pushed to the margin, right? And the mainstream gets the microphone, right? That's what we're talking about with your stuff. Sundiata is all of these messages and stuff that the mainstream always puts on everybody, right? And then people, it's hard to get the microphone if you're not part of that mainstream or condoned by the mainstream, right? Um, so the same thing happens inside of us, right? There's a mainstream in each of us, right? It's the part that I think of as me. It's the part that I like. It's the part that I intend to do and I intend to show. But then there's other parts of me too that I push to the margins. And I don't want to know about that, right? The part of me that I know and that I like, that gets the microphone. You all know about that part because I show that part. That's the part who gets to talk all the time, right? But then the parts of me that don't get the microphone show themselves in other ways, right? Maybe I get a body symptom, and or I start to like, maybe I'm talking to you about something and like part of me is like all excited about it and that's my mainstream thing, but then I'm like double signaling. I'm like showing other things. Like I'm saying, oh, yeah, I like you so much. Yes. Or, oh, yes, I'm really interested in you. Right? Like those would be double signals. In other words, since they can't get the microphone of the mainstream, they express themselves in other ways. And so that shows then. So, first of all, when we start double signaling like that, the person on the other side doesn't really trust us, right? And they might say, "Oh, look, you did that," and I'll get, "No, no, that's not true. I'm right." That father, right? "No, no, 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 you misunderstand me," right? We get defensive when somebody points something out that doesn't go along with our mainstream, right? That father's mainstream was, "I'm a good father." And his daughter pointed out that racism, and he's like, "No, no, 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 that's not true. You don't see me," right? But she did see a part of him that he didn't know. So if we notice those double signals, we can find out more about our own inner diversity and find out more about our own wholeness. And if we know more about our own wholeness, we have a greater capacity, actually, because if we're just stuck in this little mainstream version of ourselves, we're a lot of our power is on the outside. Just like if we're only listening to white people in this country, and only, right, like how much richness and fullness do we lose, right? Same thing inside of ourselves. So if we want to really have our full capacity and really be whole and really do the things we want to do, we have to also notice our marginalized parts and bring them in and give them the microphone. And that's like an inner deep democracy. So, and because and one of the ways that happens is when we look outside, we find out, how is that also in me? Which sucks. Who wants to think, oh, that guy who grabbed that horse is also in me? Right? Who wants to think that? And yet, is there something in that? Not if I go start grabbing people's stuff, but is there something in that, if I really get to the essence of that? Yes, that belongs to me. And yes. And is there something about that that can help us to interact with that guy who grabbed that horse and really go for the things we want? Whew, I got in 30 minutes on the dot. Any questions about any of that? Comments, disagreements?
That's really important. I mean, all of it was really good. I really understood fully the last part, and to be able to see it in yourself and 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 use it, not just whine about it, but then what? Okay, That's me. So so what now?
I like to just speak on the honesty. I was listening to you, Lane, and I really just respect the honesty as far as making people look at what's within themselves, because that mentality and that exercise that you were doing is something we can all do. It's something that we all need to do. But that would get down to some nitty gritty things. Then you can deal with a person when it's on the table like that, because they've done that self searching. I thought it was great.
Thank you.
It's interesting, Lane. Before you all went over that last aspect of what you were saying, I actually wrote down how important is it to internalize someone's opinion of me? So even before you delved into that, I did some self-reflection in terms of just analyzing, well, to your point, everything outer is inner to a certain extent. So how much credence should you give someone's opinion of you? And I guess your point is, I think there's some truth in everything, right? So not so much to take the total perspective of what's being said, but just get to the heart of, is there some truth to what's being presented to you, and not necessarily ignoring it. For I guess for your overall growth, it's a matter of just internalizing everything and ignoring nothing.
Well, that's a really deep thing you're talking about there, Charles, and you know, just want to put a caveat on that is that when the whole white world has put its opinion of who you are uh, on you, I think there's a lot about most all of that is not something to take on or take in. Uh, and in a conflict situation, it can sometimes be really helpful if somebody accuses me of something to be able to say, no, that's not right. That's not me. Protect myself from that. And then also to look inside and say, is there any tiny little bit of that that's true? I'm not going to take whole what, the garbage you're putting on me. That's not going to be good, right? But is there one tiny little thing about that that I need, either that I need to notice that I'm doing that I don't want to be doing, and to really be honest with myself about that, and so that I can stop doing something that isn't good? Or is there something about that actually that I could transform and use, right? Maybe they're seeing something in a part of my wholeness that I don't know.
Feel like E.F. Hutton now, don't you?
Um, by the way, Lane, first of all, thank you for that and for doing that. I know it's your profession, so it's very generous of you to share, at least the way I sharing with us or with me. I wanted to bring up something, Lane, for Charles, and for, again, I just want to go back to the reparations thing, which isn't quite on point, but Charles, Lane has done, and I've heard him do it's a presentation, but it's about his own life and his family. And instead of looking at what people didn't get, it's looking at what propelled white people along to gain more material goods and so forth. So Lane, I'm talking about when you talking about the GI Bill and your dad, and sort of you lay out
FHA.
the whole chain of what you got because of what he was allowed to get. And then the GI Bill, when you look at Black soldiers and veterans who were not allowed to partake, what they were denied and what their families were denied. So I just wanted to put that out there for when you're discussing your panel, that Lane has talked about that publicly and very powerfully, I think. So.
All right.
So, Lane, you spoke about the thing about there's a space of fear that many people go through as far as being able to communicate. You said there's a place where, you know, it was, I can't remember exactly what the terminology was, but where you might feel some way, but not comfortable enough to say so in that particular element, right? And many times those things maybe should be said or in some way dealt with because they're important. And so they get overlooked and not dealt with. And I was thinking when you were saying that, I said, you know, that uncomfortable feeling, I would take that uncomfortable feeling and multiply it by like 9 when we get pulled over by the cops. And you know, it's like we feel that powerlessness because if you say the wrong thing, they might shoot you and get away with it. You know what I mean? So it's like I understand when you're talking about that place of discomfort. You know what I mean? And that's something that everybody needs to deal with. Um, and so I think that process work, you know what I mean, it's interesting, and maybe by looking at other people's situations, maybe it might come a little more clear in certain ways, you know what I mean? Because I remember when I went to ninth grade, I had a chance to go to a school. You know, I went to Wrench too later, but I really went to this other school in Cambridge, and it was for you know, higher learning and and higher money too. I got a scholarship. But anyway, the point was is that when I went there, I went through certain things because I was definitely in a minority right there and I wasn't used to that. Um, I didn't feel any inferiority whatsoever because my mother raised me a certain way. But I could see feeling those inferiority complexes kicking in if I hadn't had some kind of background knowledge behind me. Also, a moms who would come up to the school and raise holy hell if you told me something wrong. You know, like a ninth grade teacher told me that I got a C in math and that was because Black people didn't do well in math and it was okay. So don't worry about it. And my mother, after giving me a tongue lashing about getting a C, went up there and quickly told that woman no she ever tell her son something like that before, because that pushes mediocrity and we don't deal with that. So you know, just I was fortunate, but many people are not fortunate. And so bringing it back into what the work you're talking about, Lane, maybe to look at other situations, maybe that might help to make the picture clearer. I know you've probably been doing this a long time and have many techniques of working with it, but that's just what I was thinking when you were talking.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Appreciating what you're saying. And Jordana, just to go back to what you said, that you know, I am I I am happy to just lay everything I know on the table for this group, and to share it, and even more happy to learn from all of you, and so that we got a lot of work to do, and we need all the tools we can get. So yeah, I'm here to learn and also happy to share.
Thank you, Lane.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Elaine.
Thank you. This was a
Thank you, Lane.
wonderful end to a great whole meeting. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Lane, so much for being with us. Everybody, Charles, Nancy, Irina, Jordana, Sundiata, Frank, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane, for your leadership and your vision, and for your magnetism that brings us all together. We are the iron filings at your disposal. Or I'll speak for myself. All right. Take
Thank
good care, friends.
everybody.
Good to be with you, everyone.